49ers, Chiefs, Super Bowl, the Niners. We know what color these guys will be wearing on Super Bowl Sunday, but a little more on the roller coaster that was against the Detroit Lions. How did we get here? Some interesting comments from a past 49er on Brock Purdy and the team and the Super Bowl. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Crocky209 on the socials. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. A very special guest today joining us momentarily. You know how it's going to go if you are a frequent tuner in, if you are an everydayer to the Winky Wednesday programs. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And now let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Action News 8 Sports with Nick Winkler.
Can't believe it.
Can't believe it, Wink. That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
Unbelievable game Sunday as the San Francisco 49ers advance to Super Bowl 58. I want to get to some Chiefs 49ers conversations as well. If you guys don't know, Winky Wednesdays, Nicholas Winkler, my former podcast co-host, my former radio colleague, joins us weekly and known as the voice of the fan. And a lot of times what happens, I know it happens for me a lot, Croc, it depends on the day whether he's wearing his fan hat really hard, if he's talking a lot of trash, or if he's got his analyst hat on. I try to have my unbiased analyst hat on as much as possible, some journalistic integrity covering this team that I grew up rooting for. And so halftime of the football game on Sunday, my mind is like this. Okay, do I have to do a mock draft tomorrow? This team has played a half of a good quarter so far in the playoffs. Like, was this team not as good as we thought? So I'm thinking of all these different angles. Like, what is going on with this team? How are we going to break this down? How am I going to analyze all this that's happening? And then the second half comes like, okay, I remember these guys. I remember this football team. We watched them most of the year. They're pretty stinking good. And they came back and won that game. It was absolutely a roller coaster of emotions. What was it like for you, Wink, as the voice of the fan here on Locked On 49ers to watch that game Sunday?
It's brutal. I mean, it's just talk about a roller coaster of emotions, right? You're so excited. It's been building for a week. Let's go. Oh yeah, defense. We're going to come out and stop them on the opening drive. And they just run it right down our throats. And it's just like, oh. And then the missed field goal. And you're like, oh no, this is not our day. This is not the time for this to happen. My kids are watching with me. Like, they finally got on board, right? They're finally fans. They're feeling it. And then that first half happens, and my kids are looking at me at the halftime. I'm like, guys, okay, let's use this as a learning moment, okay? So first of all, a lot of game left. But Dad, I know they're down a lot. I understand. We also, guys, you got to remember, we don't win every game. Like, I'm also preparing them for that because I'm with you. It's like, oh my gosh, this is not looking good. Really, you're going to make that big of a halftime adjustment on both sides of the ball and come back and win this football game. And when they started to, it's like, hey, guys, pay more attention. Like, I know you lost interest in this. And then I'm just pacing my house. I'm screaming. I'm yelling. My house is nuts. I've never seen my kids so excited. They're running outside, yelling, screaming at the neighbors. The 49ers won! Like, oh, man, it's just a euphoric experience to share that with my kids, too. And, like, as a fan, there's no greater feeling than the comeback. Right? It's cool to get out ahead and stomp somebody. Like, that's a good feeling. But when you feel like you're not going to win a football game and then you come back and you win a football game in the NFC Championship game, like, I still, a few days later, still feel like I'm on a cloud.
Very reminiscent of that, what was the 2003 playoff game against the New York Giants where the Niners, they were just getting their butts kicked. And then all of a sudden, Terrell Owens
Garcia,
went into
right?
like Super Saiyan mode and started really going crazy, him and Jeff Garcia. This game, and it's interesting to hear how you guys kind of saw it. I was actually sitting here on the couch watching the game by myself. When you're by yourself, you really get a chance to kind of process everything that's going on. And my main thought at halftime was, all you got to do is get a score out of halftime. Just get a score and you will be just fine. And hopefully the team that we watch all year would show up. But it started with getting a score. So once they got that score, I'm like, here they come. Here they come. Now they needed some good bounces their way. Yeah. And fans are kind of getting on me like, oh, they forced these things. It's like, look, they needed some things to go their way, and everything that they ideally want to go their way went their way in the second half. But sometimes you need that. Every game's not going to be perfect. Clearly hasn't been perfect in the postseason, but they found different ways to win the game.
It really you said, oh, go ahead, wait.
Real quick, to start the second half, I feel like, was that the drive where there was that huge third down conversion by Juwan Jennings, like the one-handed catch? Yeah. Like, that's not talked about enough. That was huge. You have to get points coming out of this to start the second half, and that play was big because it extended the drive and allowed them to get into field goal range. That was huge.
I'll tell you when I was a little worried, to be honest. So the 49ers did score out at halftime. And then the very first play, the Lions got the ball. They did play action, hit Laporta down the left sideline, and he's running. And I'm like, oh god. Then they run the ball again, and I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, there was a 3rd and 12, a 3rd and 18 that they converted. It was like they can't do anything right. You can't stop them on 3rd and 18. If you can't get off the field on 3rd and 18, pack it up, right? And so at the end of the first half, this is what I was thinking.
We do ask that you dump your trash on the way out.
It was bad. Everything was bad. You have to start over. You close the restaurant, you open it back up, and you pretend that first half didn't happen. And the 49ers absolutely did that. But Wink, what you said about the kids really hits home too, because Leo's 5 years old, my son, and I can't get him to watch anything sports-wise for longer than 10 seconds, right? But for some reason, he was kind of starting to understand how the playoffs were going. And then, my wife doesn't really care about football. She was kind of watching the game a little bit closer. And so I think he realized that there was something a little bit more important about what was happening in the game. And so he started watching it, and he's paying attention. And he sees the score at the bottom. He's like, Dad, the 49ers are losing. They're losing by 7. As if, like, for him, it's like the Lions scored 7 times to get 7 points. It's 7-0. Right. That's a big score, because he's in soccer right now. Like 7-0 sounds like insurmountable. And I was like, well, that's only 1 touchdown. It's okay, Leo. They might be able to come back from that. And then at halftime, it was like, this might not happen. And then I'm like scaring him, because there was a couple plays like the Ayuk play, and I'm shouting the screen. And I'm not the most vocal watching games. And he's like, whoa, Dad, what's going on here? A little warning if you're going to start yelling at the TV screen, because it was just like such an improbable play. And like, it was really cool to see Leo locked in. And then I showed this on the post-game pod, but he wrote this note after the game, and it says, the 49ers won. And so
yeah, they did, buddy.
Peacock, I'm sitting here thinking about how I've been watching the game on myself. Maybe for the Super Bowl, I don't know what you got going on. Maybe we can link up or something and do a live post game
watch party
episode. I don't know, man. I can make that drive to the Bay Area.
Watch party, let's go. I like that. Dude, I know there's going to be a million watch parties for the Super Bowl around the Bay Area and around Stockton, Winks in Monterey, all over California. And look, we're talking global. I'm getting hit up from people that were in Brazil watching the game, in Italy watching the game, in Scotland watching the game, so many different places. And they're like, man, I fell asleep because it's the wrong part of the day for me. And I woke up and was like, oh, what happened? And then so all of a sudden the team's ahead in the second half of the game. So it's phenomenal. We're global here. By the way, shout out to all the listeners out there. Apple Podcasts, we're a top 15 football podcast in the world right now. One of the top 2 team specific podcasts in the world, and going up. So it's really cool to see, top 100 sports podcast period. Any sport, any topic on sports on Apple Podcast charts. So it's pretty phenomenal to see that, and appreciate all the listeners out there. And we know how pumped up the faithful are for this one.
As voice of the fan, it's because you guys put out a great product. But real quick, let me just say, like, funny story. I was talking to one of my employees the other day. He was talking about the game. He's like, oh yeah, I wasn't watching it. I was like, my wife wanted to watch something else. He's not a big football fan. He's like, but our power went out at one point, and in the neighborhood. And my neighbors, I had heard, were watching the game because they were being really loud. And I just hear screaming. And then I hear door slam. like just he said 4 or 5 cars just like peeled out and left as fast as they could. Yeah, they were going to find the closest bar or something.
Oh man, that is hilarious. Maybe that was it. Remember the Super Bowl power outage, and all of a sudden the game flipped. Maybe that's what they needed, that power outage to really change things for the 49ers. And they needed a lot to change, and man, they changed it. I do want to highlight a couple of things a little bit later that changed. We've gone over some of the things, but the 49ers were really good in the second half, and they made some of their own luck. But in a comeback like that, you need some help, and pretty much all of it went bad in the first half, and all of it went good in the second half. And 49ers Chiefs is on for Super Bowl Sunday. Alex Smith has thoughts on quarterback Brock Purdy. He knows 49ers quarterbacks. He knows Chiefs quarterbacks. He knows Patrick Mahomes and his thoughts on the Super Bowl as well next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The 49ers have all those things. And that's what brings home the winning trophy in sports. And also what keeps your ride or die on the live. Keeps your ride or die alive. Keep your vehicle on the road. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. Maybe you just need wiper blades for the winter season. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your car. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, I love it. Green check, you can't go wrong. You have the green check, you know it's the right part for your car, and your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So the 49ers will be wearing road whites. It was up to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't know why. It's an NFC, AFC. I think it just flips seasons or something like that. I don't remember what the rules are for why, but the Chiefs were able to choose what they wanted uniform-wise. They choose their home reds. So the 49ers getting road whites. They're going to wear their standard road whites, not all white out. They're going to wear their standard road white uniforms in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think that impacts anything. I think a lot of people like the home reds, but the home whites are pretty. They're pretty sleek to me. I mean, I like the home whites quite a bit. I actually like them a little bit more than the whiteouts. I like the whiteouts once or twice a season. It would be kind of cool in the Super Bowl, but I don't think they're allowed. So regular road whites for the 49ers against the Chiefs, guys. Initial thoughts here.
Real quick, what's the NFL's reasoning for that? Like, if
switch off.
That switches off so I knew last year
they can't wear the all whites.
Yeah, I knew last year that the Eagles wore the green, so I figured this year the NFC would wear white. But if once we get to the postseason, we don't know how far we're going to go. Why can't we wear whatever set of uniforms we want to wear? Like what difference does it make for the game or changing things up? Like, if they have to wear red, it's one thing, right? Where sometimes we've seen in the past 49ers wear all white at home when they wanted to wear the throwbacks before they got the new throwbacks. Yeah. That's one thing where you might switch some things up. But if we have to wear white tops, why can't we, dig into the basket and pull out the all white 94 throwbacks?
Yeah, and because they wore those the last time they won the Super Bowl, right? You would think they would want something poetic and want an opportunity to do that. I mean, it has to do with control and merchandising, and the NFL is the no fun league. So
some haters.
I don't know why it would hurt the NFL financially to allow a team to wear throwbacks or alternate uniforms, but if you wear them a lot, they're not alternate uniforms. Maybe they just want, when you look back on seasons when you're watching NFL films of this 20 years from now, you want to see the regular uniforms of the regular teams. Maybe that's as simple as it is.
That makes sense, but you're right. No fun league. Just let them wear whatever they want. Come on. I'm with Croc. Come on. I don't even really love those throwback jerseys. I don't even really like the shading and everything, but the all white with the pants, that looks good.
The whites are better than the reds for sure for those.
Yes, 100%.
Throwback uniforms.
I mean, although they wore the reds when they won the Super Bowl, but I agree. The whites still look
those were, to be honest with you, I mean, nostalgic because they won. Those uniforms were bad. And those uniforms look worse than the new ones because the new ones are put together and made well, those look like they were slapped together in 5 minutes. Like the patch is all weird. They're all baggy and awful looking. There was I think there was a less shading. There's something weird about it. They did not look good. And so they even had to do some work on those to make them look better now.
Real quick, while we're on uniforms, and we'll get off this for in a second, you guys, but did you like those uniforms that the 49ers wore after that? Those it was like a darker, darker red.
That wrong red.
No.
That was the worst. The
so
Kevin
bad.
Barlow years. Ugh.
Oh yeah, I hated the maroon so bad, and the more gold. I feel like there was gold flake in it almost or something. I don't know. There's something really off about it. And look, everything in the 90s, uniforms just went off the rails, man. Because everybody's uniforms look good now. What are they doing? They're going back to what it looked like in the 80s, basically, right? So by the mid 90s, everyone was going like dark and black and purples, and the Niners went to a darker red. And in a lot of cases for sports uniforms, it didn't work as well. And so
I'd like to see them like just one time. Like I've seen someone do like the little jersey swap, and they were doing it when Trey Lance was on the team.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "What do you guys think about these uniforms?" And it looked sweet on Lance because it was like a newer fit, like you talked about, like 90s. It was a little baggier and things like that. But I mean, when you look at them now on the players now that know how to put, it looked good for like one game. Now the fans are gonna be like, "No, Croc," but I wouldn't mind one game in those.
Yeah, if there's
like voice of the fan, no, Croc, no,
like an anniversary of some event, that has to do with trail runs or something. Maybe you do
like
it for
one game.
But don't go back to them. And in fact, I wish they would go back to the old logo, the old oval SF. I like the old one without the extra colors. There's too many colors. You don't need the it's like the red, the black, and then another line of shading, and it's oval, and it just looks like it looks like a Bud Light logo or something. It looks too logo-y. I like just the old plain SF. It's got one black circle around it. That's it. I love the old logos from the 80s with the modern fit. And so I do like the new reds and whites they have. Their regular uniforms I think are awesome. Some of the best uniforms they've ever worn. Get the old helmet oval logo back, and you would really be cooking. But we all know it doesn't matter what the uniforms are. It matters what the guys inside the uniforms are doing. And Wink, what is your initial thoughts on the Kansas City Chiefs this year in the matchup for the rematch of the 2019 season Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, when the playoffs started, this is exactly what I picked because you just don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. Well, now I'm ready to bet against Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, this is a team that beat us in the Super Bowl just a few years ago. And if you're going to go and have to take that next hurdle after you've been knocked down when you've gotten to the top a few times, what better team to do it against than the team that beat you there last time? And a guy who is solidifying himself right now as the best player in the NFL, 6 straight AFC Championship games, right? Super Bowl, 3 out of the last 4 years or something crazy like that? It's ridiculous what he's doing in Kansas City right now. If you want to be the best, you want to have the title, you got to go beat the best. You got to go beat the defending champs. Go do it. Let's go.
Should the 49ers be favored in this one? They're favored by 1.5 points, Croc, to start. And I haven't seen if the line's changed since that opening line over at FanDuel, but the 49ers, and I keep going back to this because it's not a good recipe. The 49ers have played less than 3 full quarters of good football, and they're in the Super Bowl right now. I don't know when the last time that's happened.
If you take the full season and look at that from that standpoint, I could see how the 49ers are favored. If you look at the last 2 games, I could see how you have an argument for that to be switched, and maybe even the Chiefs favored by a little bit more. Throughout the year, for the most part, the 49ers are pretty dominant. And there were some weird losses for the 49ers, but maybe you could say, well, they had some injuries and whatnot. The Chiefs had some losses too that weren't great losses, like losing to the Packers and
Raiders, right?
The Raiders, that's the one.
Yeah, where it's 49ers, you're losing a couple guys. You know how important Trent Williams and how important CMC. He left the Browns game, and Deebo Samuel. They played several games without those guys, so at least the odds makers and guys can justify, why the 49ers lost those games. But KC, some weird losses in there when you kind of had the guys. Now, throughout the year, I do feel like a lot of their guys have gotten better. We talked about Rashee Rice, and he's continuing to improve as a reliable target for Patrick Mahomes. And I get asked a lot about this game everywhere I go. People are like, "Wait, what do you think? What are you thinking?" And I'm like, Patrick Mahomes just scares me because every time I watch him in these moments, it's like whatever he has to do to win, he does that. And the best way I could explain it to someone was Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, he expects to win. Like when he steps on the field, he expects to win. I think a lot of other people, when they step on the field, they hope to win. But Patrick Mahomes, like, he expects to win. And, a guy kind of walking onto the field with that mindset is just it's a little different. So that's kind of the scariest thing. I was scared of some things with Dan Campbell and actually like flipped against him and 49ers won. Hopefully, I'm wrong about this one too.
You talk about somebody who, when he needs to do whatever he needs to do to win a football game, he wins it. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Brock Purdy's doing that too, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 2 bad quarters of football, 3 bad quarters of football against the Packers, and then put together that drive at the end. You're talking about a guy who had a bad first half and then put together an amazing second half. I mean, this is what Purdy's made of, right? This is his time. This is his spotlight. This is his time to show everybody, like, look, I can do it too. Not this Mahomes guys, not just him.
I saw Mahomes down a score with 13 seconds left and 1 timeout, and just boop, 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 like field goal range, kick field goal, going to overtime. It's just like 13 seconds.
Yeah,
13 seconds.
I hate to bring it up, but I saw Mahomes down 10 in the Super Bowl and scored 3 straight touchdowns. So I'm scared too, Crocky. I'm scared.
Hey, but some people call Brock Purdy, to your point, Wink, mini Mahomes for a reason. So let's get Alex Smith's comments on both Brock Purdy and the 49ers against the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 58 next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate. And I know the 49ers fans absolutely do celebrate Super Bowl 58 from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks and beverage, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3, not only for your favorite team, but how about for your pocketbook as well? Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, Niners favored. And by the way, they haven't covered the number in either one of the playoff games. And so if they can win this and not cover the number, that means they have to win by a singular 1 point. So 49ers, how about covering that number, whatever it is, on Sunday at FanDuel? FanDuel has bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, so many more, tons of Super Bowl prop bets. New customers can join today and get $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. I love what I heard from Alex Smith. A little worried about what I heard from Alex Smith on another topic, because there's a lot of truth in all of it from Alex Smith. And he's become a really good analyst, and we know he is a smart guy, and he's beloved here, despite how his career started. I have a ton of respect for Alex Smith because he was on the worst team in the NFL when he was drafted, and he was beat up and had a different offensive coordinator for 5 straight years. And somehow he came out of it ahead and turned himself into a really good starting quarterback and a Pro Bowler, and then was a mentor later in his career after he was a 49er for Patrick Mahomes during his rookie season in the Kansas City Chiefs and took them to the playoffs. So when Alex Smith speaks, I listen to it. And he spoke about Brock Purdy this week, and I love what he said. He said, I am the chairperson of the Game Managers Club. And he was checked down Charlie to the max, especially early on in his career. Like, he got the ball out to his running backs every moment he could. That's not Brock Purdy's game. And Alex Smith said, look, that's I'm the ultimate game manager. I know a game manager when I see one. Brock Purdy's not allowed in the club. He is not a game manager. He is a playmaker. And so I loved hearing that from him, because what we've been saying. And so kudos to Alex Smith. But what he said about the Super Bowl worries me. And he said that he's worried. He
said the 49ers are going to lose.
Yes. He said he would pick the Kansas City Chiefs. And he said it's because the 49ers, not because of Brock Purdy. He says because of the 49ers defense. And he said something that I've noticed, and we actually touched on a little bit earlier this week, Croc. He said the 49ers defense is so static. He says they don't do a lot. And if you're going to be that static, you better have dudes everywhere to go up against Patrick Mahomes, because teams are so good at finding ways to beat you if they know where you're always going to be on defense. And so to me, that almost pointed towards scheme more than the players that 49ers have on the defensive side of the ball. But the 49ers defense has been the thing that's let them down more so than anything this year. It's really flipped this year, where the offense has been the strength for the 49ers over the defense, even though you look at the numbers and the DVOA and, the 49ers are still pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen in these playoff games against good teams, they've been able to run the ball. They've been able to set the tone early. They've been able to extend drives and what was Goff, 5 of 5, 6 for 6, something like that in the first half on third downs. And it really wasn't until they started going crazy in the second half that they were able to come back in this game. And I loved how they played in the second half, but I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if maybe the players aren't as good as we thought, but there's some truth to what Alex Smith is saying. He's basically like, look, of the 4 units on the field, offensive defense for both teams, the 49ers defense is the worst of the 4 units. Do you guys agree to that?
I think he has a very valid point. And you talked about scheme because, how much has changed with this defense from last year. Now, I think you and we definitely talked about it. Like, I think the 49ers defensive line is a little overrated. We were talking about that last year, and it felt like, man, it was all on both sides. We really felt that in the NFC Championship game. And then head into this year, it kind of felt the same, where a team that is built to rely on the front end guys, you weren't quite getting that type of production. So when you are built like that, and it's got to be those guys that kind of carry you, and then they're not getting the job done, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult for whoever the coordinator is, because, hey, this is how you guys have constructed this roster. Like, you didn't go out and get prime Jalen Ramsey. And like, if you remember what the Dolphins did, is like, let's go get Jalen Ramsey. We got Xavier Howard. We drafted a safety really high in Holland, who has been terrific. And all right, worst case scenario, if we don't have a great pass rush, we're going to be able to coverage on the back end. Well, the 49ers have had to kind of piece things together with kind of, I don't want to be disrespectful, but lower in talent, right? Like, day 3 guys most of the time. And they have played very well. And we've seen guys be all pro and do all that. But those still are guys that can at times be a little bit suspect to certain things. And 49ers are like, well, that's fine if they are, because more times than not, we're going to get pressure up front and we're going to be fine. When you're not getting that, then what? And we know this is Kyle Shanahan. Talk about Wilkes. Everybody's going to throw him under the bus here, but he came in and said, I'm still kind of learning the scheme a little bit. Like, this is Kyle's deep. This is what Kyle wants. And Kyle and John Lynch telling him how this team is built and how it should be running. Right now, something isn't quite clicking from a consistency standpoint. They have played well in the stretches. This is still a team that was top 5 in defense, but you haven't seen that consistent, good, dominating play from the defense in more games than not this year.
Right, but don't you feel like you guys are completely right? I think Alex Smith is right with what he said about that 49er defense, that of the 4 units, they are at the bottom. But I feel like they've got so much talent. They've got so many playmakers on that defense that they could be the reason that the 49ers win the Super Bowl, right? They could play better than the other 3 units, and they could just really go off. Bosa has something. Chase Young decides to start playing football again and actually get some pressure. I mean, Armstead looked great in that game. Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner playing well.
I want to say real quick, and I'm going to let you finish, but Javon Kinlaw had a really good game for the 49ers. He
did.
And
he played well.
He's a very inconsistent player. We haven't sung a lot of his praises here on the podcast since he's become a 49er, because he's been hurt a lot of inconsistencies. That big 4th down play, he got a push. Bosa was around the corner, made Goff move, and then Kinlaw was pushed up and beat his man. Then he had Armstead getting his big arms in the way as well, and it really screwed up that 4th down play, and it was a team effort. And you saw a lot of that in the second half, and a lot of it wasn't there in the first half. In fact, Bosa said after the game on the field with Josina Anderson, he said, yeah, there was just somebody screwing up a gap every time on defense. He's like, we can't have that. We fixed that in the second half of the game. So I don't know if he's throwing one of his teammates. I don't know if it's the same guy or if it's a scheme thing, but and Bosa was a monster in the second half of that game. And a lot of people in the front 7 played a lot better in the second half, but you got to do that all game long.
You're talking about like Gibson played a fantastic game, made some huge plays. We didn't even really talk about Ward or hear about Ward or Lenore because they just weren't throwing at those guys. It was just Ambry Thomas all day. Where's Ambry Thomas? That's where we're going to throw. Where's Ambry Thomas? That's where we're going to throw. So to me, like, that's obviously the weak point in the defense, where Kansas City is probably going to try to attack the 49er defenses wherever Ambry Thomas is, or whoever's playing for Ambry Thomas next week or in 2 weeks. So I think the defense, yes, is probably on the low end, but I've got faith that they're going to step up. We're going to see Wilkes is going to have something ready to go. You can't just keep rushing for every single play against Patrick Mahomes and expect to beat him because he's going to pick you apart.
I think you did say one key thing there, and I also want to add to this. Football is a game of matchups, and having St. Brown out there and Laporta are kind of that's a tough matchup for most teams along the NFL right now, especially the 49ers. Well, who truly threatens you with the Kansas City Chiefs outside of Kelsey? Like Kelsey, he is Kelsey. And I saw someone post one of those heat things where it shows like all the routes he ran.
Yeah.
And this guy was like, what the hell is this? It's like he's just running all around. And I'm like, it's funny. I was thinking, it's funny because Peacock and we just talked about that yesterday on yesterday's episode, saying he kind of he'll run his route and then for the most part, a lot of off-script stuff and selling in a soft spot. Then Mahomes finds him. For the 49ers, if you really want to get control of this defensively, you got to get to Mahomes before he can start making those off-script plays, because a lot of times that's where the big plays come. And then you start letting him make plays with his legs, which he makes these back-breaking plays with his legs. We saw that in the Super Bowl last year where it looked like, okay, you kind of got him, and he's playing on one leg, and he's like, I'm still going to take off for 45 yards. Like, he can do those things. So I think the pass rush more than any game is going to be very pivotal. But the weapons outside of Kelsey are the guys that can threaten even Ambry Thomas. Like Ambry Thomas versus Rashee Rice. Are you worried about Ambry Thomas on Rashee Rice? I think Peacock made a great point yesterday off air saying, I don't think that scares Ambry Thomas as opposed to Jameson Williams, who can fly, right?
Yeah.
St. Brown, some of these other guys that they've had to face.
No doubt. And much like Purdy in the second half against the Lions, you can't let Mahomes do that, run around and make plays in those back-breaking plays against you if you're the 49ers defense. So that's obviously a huge one and a huge key to the game, which we're going to continue to talk about over the next couple of weeks as we get ready for Super Bowl 58. I can't wait for it. Should be a lot of fun. Wink, appreciate you joining the show here on Wiki Wednesday as always.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks to all the everydayers. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. We're going to have some special guests for you coming up over the next couple of weeks. We're going to go live, keys to victory. We're going to have a Super Bowl crossover with the Locked On Chiefs guys. It's going to be a lot of fun getting ready for Super Bowl 58. So stay right here, Locked On 49ers.
See ya.